Hi there, Alex.
Hey, how are you doing?
Not too bad. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Ashley.
How are you?
Hey, Paul.
Hi.
Hi, Nico.
Hi, everyone.
Have I got enough light?
You do. And Miko has more
And Miko has
today.
I've got the subtle lighting. I don't know what it is. I'm probably getting this bit a bit closer, then it doesn't. It's probably a little bit less. It looks a little bit like what do you call it when you I don't know, soft lighting, isn't it? I don't know, but
yeah.
I think it's okay. I don't think I'm going to get it much better.
I got some glare on my glasses. I can't help it.
Hi, Dolly.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Dolly.
Hi, Dolly.
Pete, is Roger joining tonight, or is he unable to make the...
Well, he said he would try, but I think it's 7 o'clock's too early for his work. I've also had a call from Simon Nella to say there's some problem where he's working. You know, he works for the railways, and he's gonna, if he can join us, he's gonna not be able to join us for the full hour. So I'm expecting Tony Woodward. I can see everybody else. Dave Williams, I'm also expecting.
So I just want to know how to edit the slide with everyone's names on. Should I put David or Dave?
Dave.
Okay. Should I delete Roger's name or?
No, include, because what I'll do is I'll kind of make it clear that people like Roger and Lenny have contributed to tonight, because, you know, I've had conversations with them and it would be good to get their names reflected. Hi, Audley. Nice to see
Hello,
you.
right.
Hi, Audley.
Hey,
Hi.
long time no see, Audley.
Okay. Ashley.
Where have you been hiding?
Out in East London.
You haven't changed a bit.
Oh, I think I have.
Hi, Audley.
Hi, Tony.
Hey, my God, how are you?
Hi, hello. How are you?
Hi, Tony.
Hello, everyone.
This is so cool. This is so cool.
Sorry for web bombing here.
He's going to be in the other room, don't worry. But, you know.
One thing, Alex, when we go to the slides.
Yeah. Do you want me to show you the slides?
Yeah, because when we introduce them, I think it will be good to leave them up for a certain period of time, but I don't want them up for the entire part of that discussion. Okay.
Okay, so this slide will be on when we start. So just so everyone's aware, when I click a button, that's when all of the attendees will join, and we'll have the screen up and give them a few minutes to settle in. Then, Pete, I think I'm saying just a few short remarks before I hand over to you.
Yeah.
And then I've just converted your slides into this format, so these should be very familiar to you.
Yeah.
And in the same order.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I've put this one at the end, so when we finish, we can advertise the webinar next weekend.
Great.
And then that's it.
Very good. One little thing, I'm going to ask the question. I was going to ask it of Nelly. I did ask him actually, but I didn't when I speak to you guys. I didn't talk to you about it. The name Stonewall. So we know that there was a football club called Lambda. In fact, Lenny said that he and Toby Mosk played for them. And in the Salmon and Compass, there was a conversation about what we should be named. And what are your recollections?
That was very, very early stages. In fact, when I put the advert in, I already had that name in mind. And then when we had the first meeting, I suggested that should we call ourselves Stonewall FC. And that's
Simon Nella said there was a Scouser called Brian who also, I don't know if that ringing any bells with you, Miko or guys.
It does with me. He was there early.
He was there in that conversation as well. Okay, well, Miko, I'll come to you so you can tell that story, okay? Because it's really important how we got the name.
Yeah.
And of course, Stonewall, the organisation in this country, had started a couple of years earlier, you know, as a result of Section 28.
Yeah, the first conversation was because in the first meeting in the pub, I certainly had Dima and Christian, the two Germans, and a few others. So I mentioned Stonewall FC, and then I was wondering whether we can actually use the name because of the organisation existing in London. And then it was decided later and we should ask them. And someone asked, it wasn't me, but someone else asked them, and they agreed that it's fine.
Okay, that's
Pete,
a good story. Yeah.
I'm just going to jump in. Miko, I think there's an issue with your sound. So there's two things, which is we're getting a noise in feedback when you're on, and also you're very mute when you speak. I don't know what device.
Okay. Try to good settings.
You might have to speak a little louder, Miko.
Yeah. I've had all the, I'm using the computer microphone, obviously.
Is this the device you were using on Wednesday when we had a practice, or have you switched the
I'm
device?
using the same one.
Okay.
Don't really know what's causing it.
We can understand. We can understand you, Miko. It just sounds a tiny bit robotic.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of a metallic sound.
Yeah, but if you speak clearly, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's a bit of echo. You get a bit of echo when you. So I don't know if you've got any techies with us here today, and
Keeping out of this tech talk, you know what I'm like, Alex.
Yeah, Miko, one option is to log out, maybe reboot and try again.
Yeah, do you have time for that? Yeah, I'll go out and do again.
9 minutes, yeah.
See you in a bit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it's exciting.
Is Simon or Roger able to join us?
Roger said he couldn't make 7. Simon Ella rang me this morning, Tony, and said that there'd been some operational issues at work and that he was going to try to join us. But if he did join us, it probably wouldn't be for the whole hour. That naming of Stonewall, I was going to go to him, but I'll go to Miko. And Dave Williams said he would join. I had a long chat with him earlier in last week, so I was hoping he would join as well. I have got 1 or 2 things, particularly around the league and the team from Dave, which I can use. But I think we've got more than enough people here to get through the conversation.
Hey, I'm going to shut you up for a second just to check Miko's sound.
Do I still sound metallic or?
No,
that's a lot better. That's a lot better.
Oh, right, that's good. So it worked.
Yes.
So Alex, questions in terms of the chat and the management of the questions. Do you just want to go through that again so everybody's on the same page?
So I think we agreed on Wednesday that so you can all focus on the discussion, I will pop up towards the end when the discussion has sort of reached its natural conclusion, and help with putting questions to the panel. So we've had some through on email in advance, by the way. So Pete, I don't know if you've got some in front of you.
I do.
I don't know how you want to use those.
There was one question came in from Nigel Simmons about how did people get their nicknames. Now, when I was talking to Audley, you spoke actually about how the names that we use confuse sometimes the players. And
the opposition, not so much the player. Our players.
Yeah, the opposition players. Yeah. So I might welcome to you to, because we are. God knows how, Wendy, you got your name. I can guess at Hilda. I can guess at Mo.
Well, I like Baker as well.
Say that again, Paul?
I had Mar Baker as well.
You did have Mar Baker.
I was looking at some of the old When Sunday Comes, and you know there was quite a lot of Mar Baker in there. So
Pete, mine was really silly. There was me, Tony Roberts, and Alan Boswell, all pissed at
Also, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
after a game, and I had a hoodie on that had two cords hanging down the front, and Big were on the dance floor, and he just grabbed my cords and started swinging them and shouting "Win!" and it's lived with me for 30 years.
Yeah, I will come to you and ask you that question, by the way.
Don't you dare.
I was never given a name. I had to make up my own one because the amount of football boots I ended up buying. So was it Imelda, after Imelda Marcos?
Oh, Imelda, yes, I do.
You had so many pairs of shoes, and me, it was like the amount of football boots that I had, you know, too many. I never wore out a pair of football boots because I had so many. So I named myself Imelda. If I was going to have a name, it would be Imelda.
What about you, Mo?
Does Audley remember walking through New York's Greenwich?
Yeah, I remember mine. Yeah,
2 o'clock in the morning, pissed,
I do remember
screaming
that,
at
yeah.
everyone, I'm Morag.
Morag.
Well, I'm definitely going to ask that question, right? So be prepared. Okay. And Paul, you spoke to me about how you were at first at Paul Barker. Do you remember?
well, yeah, I kind of basically was worried about being out for the straight team and at work. So any interviews, I kind of like used the name Paul Barker, just to sort of like, and I avoided photos in the first few years, but then I got a bit braver. And I think when we've actually won something, I think I kind of then felt, right, you know, now we've won something, we've achieved something, you know, time to man up and be brave and go in front of the cameras. But yeah, for the first few years, you know, just use the pseudonym Barker. But hey ho, times have changed.
Times have changed.
A lot different. A lot different.
Yeah. So we'll start with a little bit of context just about what being gay in 1990 was like. Then we'll go to the introductions. We'll use slide 1 for the context, please, Alex. Then we'll go into the introductions. And we can see you all. So what I'm going to suggest is I go through each of you and just introduce you, and you can, if you just wave when I'm speaking about you, because quite a number of the people, particularly the new members of the club, will probably not recognize you. They'll know some of you, but not all. And then we'll go into the Salmon and Compass section, all about the club formation and what it was like to, and the reasons why you joined. Then we go into the Queens of the South and the impact that that had on you as individuals and on the club. Then we go into the first season and, you know, the players, the names, the challenges. And then we wrap with the tours, talking about New York and 4321 and how you know, what the tours meant to you. And then very at the end, I'm going to come to each of you with the question, you know, kind of looking back, what do you remember and what do you think, you know, the legacy of those early years were. If we have then time, we'll go to some of the questions that have been posted or some of the chat that will have been posted. And then right at the end, you've got the golden stiletto, Paul. Love it. Then right at the end, we'll signal to the next webinar.
Okay, so we're in a couple of minutes. I'll hit go, and we'll, as I said, we'll give attendees a few minutes to join. But after I press the button, you'll be visible and audible to anyone who's joining, just so you're aware. Yeah, but we ought to give people a couple of minutes to settle in.
In your language.
Well, you're the first person, Alex, to speak. So you know, you're going to cue us in. So. By the way,
what was that?
have we started yet?
No, we haven't.
No. Lenny Bruce told me about a tournament in London. It was in the early days. Was it a GFSN tournament in Market Road, where we got through to it was a small number of teams, we got through to the final. Lenny got sent off in the final?
Pete, it was a European competition. All the gay European teams turned up. We got to the final against Hamburg, and there was a clash of heads between Lenny and one of the Hamburg players, and it was quite serious.
Had an ambulance turn up on the pitch,
and the ambulance turned up, and Hamburg refused to play on. We were winning 1-0, but Hamburg walked off the pitch, so we ended up giving them the trophy. And I think a few years later they handed it back.
Oh, wow. And we got through to the final in season 2, didn't we? The Wandsworth and District Cup final. Paul, you scored, but we lost 2-1.
I've lost sight of everyone, and I don't know why.
We can still
I
see
don't know why either, Tony. It's 7 o'clock, so I'm going to hit go on the webinar if everyone's okay with that.
Okay.
Okay, here goes. Well, hello to those who've just joined us. We're just going to give attendees a few minutes to join before we get going. Well, thank you to everyone who's joined so far. We'll just give a couple more minutes for people to join before we get going, but you're all very welcome. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this, a Stonewall Football Club webinar celebrating the 30th anniversary of the club coming into existence. I'm Alex Baker. I'm the current chair of Stonewall Football Club, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this webinar tonight. I'm not the main draw tonight, so I'll only say a few opening remarks before handing over to our moderator, Pete Shuttleworth. What I will say is, for obvious reasons, COVID has made planning our celebrations of the club's 30th anniversary particularly difficult. And what we hope is that these webinars this weekend and next weekend are the start of a year-long celebration of the club's history. What we hope to do this week and next week is both celebrate and reflect on the personal contribution of many of the club's alumni, but also the context in which the club has existed over the last 30 years, and also to celebrate its achievements and the individual contributions of so many of our current and former members. Tonight is all about the past, but I will just raise one point about the club's future. In a few weeks, we hope to be launching our women and non-binary team in our 30th year, extending the Stonewall franchise and ensuring the club is a fully inclusive LGBT club. We'll post in the chat more details about a fundraising campaign that we've got to ensure that we can sustain that team. And there'll also be details in the chat later on about our webinar next week. But without further ado, I'll hand over to the moderator tonight, Pete Shuttleworth.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been speaking to the people that you can see on the screen and a couple of others, and I will introduce them in a moment. But first, if we look back 30 years and think about what it was like to be a gay person then compared to a gay person now, there are some sharp contrasts. If you can go to the first slide, please, Alex. There was a national press and there's a gay press. And in the national press, the news was not always supportive about gay people. There was still the ongoing cloud of AIDS and the threat of AIDS, and the papers had a particular way of presenting gay people in that light. Yes, we'd have the first EastEnders kiss, but yes, we'd also had the government's Don't Die of Ignorance campaign in 1987. In that same year, the government had introduced a law called Section 28, which actively prevented anybody talking about homosexuality in a positive way, certainly the teaching of it or the communication around it and the supporting of the organizations, the gay organizations. Justin Fashanu had come out in 1990. It was going to be some time later that he unfortunately killed himself. And no mobile phones, no websites, no Grindr. And the news for gay people was conveyed through specific publications, which you could pick up in gay pubs more often than not, capital Gay, Pink Paper and Boys. So a very different world then. In 1992, it was still the case that the World Health Authority classed being gay as a mental disorder. And it was illegal to be gay in the Isle of Man. It had only recently been actually, the law had changed for Scotland. The age of consent for a gay person was 21. For a straight person, it was 16. You couldn't donate blood if you were a gay person, and you could not serve in the military if you were openly gay. So very different to the position now that we were in then. And the people that you're going to meet now decided to form a gay football team and play in a gay football team, despite all that I've just said. So we go back to the previous slide, Alex, and let's introduce the panel for this evening. First of all, we have Paul Baker. He was there from the very beginning, didn't play in the first couple of games, which we'll go on to know about. Became captain, committee member, and all-round Stonewall stalwart. He still tells me he's the first Englishman that lifted the World Cup since Bobby Moore. And I think he may be one of a very small number of people, perhaps even one, that has won a bronze, a silver, and a gold medal in the gay games. Nico, he a Finnish sports journalist in London, Nico Kukkonen. He was the person, as we will learn, placed the ad that led to a number of people joining the club. We have Tony Woodward, otherwise known as Wendy, trade on a Saturday night and scoring on a Sunday morning is what he told me. We're going to learn about how he got the name and what it was like playing in that first season. Audley Patterson joined the club wanting to play football, not talk about football, which is what the GSFN did back in 1990. And Ashley Pitter, who has played I think in every single year of the club's existence, I should say Ashley Pitter MBE, joined in the first season towards the end of that first season, and we'll learn all about what his experience was playing for straight teams. Most of the players that you can see in front of you did play for straight teams at the time. We'll learn the reasons why they decided that they'd rather play for a gay team and form a gay team. So, with that in mind, before I go further, actually, I should also say, although they're not with us, Simon Neller, Roger Taylor, and Lenny Bruce and Dave Williams, I've also been having conversations with over the past few weeks in preparation for this. I did hope that Simon might be able to join us, but he's got a work issue. He may join us. Let's hope that he does. Roger Taylor he's working, unfortunately, otherwise he would have been here. He's still a great club archivist. He's got some amazing documents and facts up his sleeve about Stonewall. Lenny Bruce I spoke to at length in Spain. He was the first Stonewall captain, and he's given me quite a few pointers as to what life was like in that first season. And lastly, but not least, Dave Williams, the first Stonewall manager, who in that first game was on the sidelines as the players played in the first ever game for Stonewall FC. So let's start. It's 1990. Mikko, I'm going to come to you. You're in London, a sports journalist in London, and you were the person that placed the advertisement in capital Gay asking for people to join for a kickabout. Tell me about the events leading up to that and the conversations that you remember that took place in the Salmon and Compass pub.
Right. Yes, I was the one who did the ad in Gay. But before that, I moved to London in 1988 in September, and I worked as a freelance sports journalist from the beginning. And I had played football in Finland before moving up to London, and I wanted to carry on playing football in some form. So I actually joined a straight team probably in 1989 sometime. Played for a few months, trained with them, and then I also trained and played with Crystal Palace supporters team for a while, probably 2 or 3 months or so. But that faded out, and then in the end I decided I wanted to play football. I wasn't happy with just not doing anything, so I thought, well, one evening I was reading Capital Gay, and I decided, well, I'm going to put an ad in the magazine and see what happens. And I didn't expect anything. I had no plan whatsoever. I just wanted to play football with like-minded people. So I put the advert in, and then the phone started ringing. The next day the paper came out. I think it was during the week. I can't remember who phoned me first. It must be one of these guys who are sitting here. But then we had a meeting in a pub, and a lot of people turned out in the first training session. I can't remember which park it is now in London, but I think we had up to 10 people turning up.
Let's go back to that pub, Mikko, because
Yeah.
the Salmon and Compass and the discussion that was had there. I know Tony and Paul, you were at that pub meeting, and I think Simon Neller as well. What are your recollections of the discussion at the Salmon and Compass, and how it was decided that a club should go forward?
It was a GFSN meeting held at the Salmon and Compass. So it was an obvious place, I guess, for people interested in football to turn up and chat about football. And it was there. I mean, me and Paul turned up at the Salmon and Compass and put our names down in the pub to join the training.
Yeah, we just thought it'd be a great idea to get involved, and this was quite groundbreaking at that time in London, and to see that there were like-minded footballers who wanted to play the beautiful game was great news to us. So we kind of put our names down and said, yeah, we'd love to go to the training sessions. I was playing straight football for the Corinthian Casuals, so I was wondering whether I could combine, playing football 2 days on the trot. But you kind of just thought, well, it's got to be there. And Tony persuaded me to come along to one of the games, which I'm sure we'll come on to. And, it was a start of a great journey for me and so many of other people at Stonewall Football Club.
Well, for me, it was very much, I was playing for straight team at the time, and seeing the ad and, long conversation with a guy called Chris Galley. I actually went along because at the time I just didn't know anybody who was gay who played football. I thought I was the only one, and seeing this ad, I was basically curious to see if there's anybody else like me. And when I went along and saw the ordinary people just like me who wanted to play football, and that was the start of it for me. I thought, okay, I can do what Paul was doing, which was playing with a straight team on a Saturday afternoon and then playing on a Sunday morning, not going out Saturday night, but just having, being sensible, having a pizza, then going to bed just after the match of the day, and then going out and playing on a Sunday morning.
What about you, Wardley? You were playing for a straight team as well at the time, weren't you?
Yeah, I actually went along to some GFSN meetings before, it would have been before that one, to set up Stonewall. And when I went along, it was with the hope of being able to play. And there were some discussions about, shall we have 5-a-side games, but it didn't really go anywhere. And I'd been playing for a straight football team in East London for a few years. And I wanted to play football, but needed to play without worrying about my sexuality, being outed, basically. It was a very nice club, very, so we didn't really win many things. We always lose. We just went along to play football as a Sunday league. And I saw the ad, and I'd seen it a few times and kept looking at it. I'd remember hearing about Lambda, hadn't gone along. And it was my partner at the time said, look, you've got to do it. And I ended up leaving my team to go along. And it was a big jump for me because it was playing with a team where I knew everyone got on with me. But I was aware that they were starting to work out my sexuality. And I remember one Christmas, it was, you're going to come out with us this Christmas. And I always said no. And so come along, there's not going to be any girls there. And I thought, oh, okay. And they were fine, but I decided to take the plunge, and I went along to Wandsworth Common for one of the practice sessions. There were hundreds of us, well, there were hundreds, it seemed like about 40 people there, just put two sides together and we just played around. And I think it was Dave Williams who decided I wasn't midfielder, I should play as defender. And
the rest, as they say, is history.
Yes.
So we'll come on to the training and the games in a sec, but in those early meetings, those discussions, you're right, there was a football team called Lambda. There was a football team later as well that was called Lambda, as Andy Walmsley is going to talk to us about next week. But how did the name Stonewall FC come to be? Miko, what's your recollection of that?
Yeah, I didn't really have any kind of plan as such, but I had this dream in mind that, oh, if there is a team and if we can play football, we should call ourselves Stonewall FC. But then when we had these conversations in the pub, I mentioned it again, and people seem to agree that, yes, that's a good idea. But then we had to ask actually Stonewall, the organization, whether that should be okay. I wasn't the one who asked Stonewall, but it might have been Dave or someone else went to Stonewall and they said it's absolutely fine, you can use Stonewall.
So Stonewall it was, and Simon Nella reminded me that, not only has it got that link with the gay organization, which had formed as a result of Section 28, people like Ian McKellen and the actor that was in that EastEnders Kiss, Roger Cashman, yeah, and that had formed a couple of years ago. So we were now Stonewall FC. We were organising training sessions. Was it at Wandsworth? And I heard that there was also 5-a-sides in the basement of the Shell building, which I think that actually is where you first went along, isn't it?
Yeah. Just because it was quite local to me, living in Balham, and Waterloo's just literally around the corner. Just remember having this long conversation, I said, with Scally, and saying where they were, and I went along, and it was the wait in the foyer, because I think, if I remember correctly, it was like three stories down in the lift, and we couldn't get everybody in the lift all together. So it was like, a certain amount would go in first, and then the rest would wait, and then it would be like that. And we get down and find there's a whole sports complex underground. Very, very nerve-wracking until I kicked the ball for the first time, did my first pass, playing central defense. And I remember Dave Williams sort of looking at me and just raised his eyebrow and then said to me, "Oh, are you available next Sunday?" And I just thought, "Oh, hang on a minute, this is a bit too soon. I'm here because I'm really curious to see who these players are. Can they play football?" And at the time, I was quite comfortable being in the closet playing for my Saturday side.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because Tony, Paul, Audley, you were all playing for straight teams. Audley, you made the decision to actually stop and go and play for Stonewall exclusively. But Tony and Paul, your story is different. Let's Tony first.
So I'd played years before. I'd been playing with a straight team, and I'd been playing with them for about a year and a half. Was regularly up front, putting in goals, you know, if not on a weekly basis, just regularly. And then it just became over time apparent that I was gay. And I suddenly found myself number 13, number 14, number 15. And I actually stopped playing for quite some time. Me and Paul got to know each other before Stonewall. And me and Paul would spend Saturday afternoons playing 1v1 in a park in East London for like 2 or 3 hours, you know, with jumpers for goalposts. And then, you know, and then of course the chance to go to training with what wasn't at the time Stonewall, but what became Stonewall. And that reignited my passion for playing. You know, I'd been numbed really by the experience, and I didn't really want to. If Stonewall hadn't come along, I probably wouldn't have joined another straight team, because it was an unhappy experience where you just thought, okay, I just don't fit in.
And Paul, you were playing for Corinthians, as you said earlier,
Yeah.
and enjoying it. What were you thinking and feeling, you know, thinking about playing for a gay football team? And you know, we'd still not had the Queens of the South, which we're going to come on to. So this is just, you know, the training and preparation for a league season to come.
Yeah, I guess I thought I could combine the two. And, you know, one of the things I used to say is I play for a straight team on Saturday and a gay team on Sunday. So as long as I remember what day it is, I was all right, you know. So it became a situation where when Stonewall, you know, when Tony sort of said to me, I think it was the 5th game, you know, come along, we need some help and what have you. I just thought, wow, this is good. You know, I can't afford to miss this opportunity. I mean, I was loving playing for Corinthian Casuals, and I didn't want that to stop, but I wanted to be part of this exciting new adventure. And, you know, I think combining the two worked really well. I mean, obviously fitness, as Ashley said, you had to kind of, you know, forsake the Saturday nights, because to try and, you know, go out on a Saturday night and play the second game and do yourself justice was tough. So, and I must admit, I kind of never thought that the Corinthian Casuals would ever know about Stonewall. But just a funny little story a bit later on was I said after one game, God, I could murder a plate of sausage and chips, and one little lad whipped up and said, I thought you had enough sausage by now. So I kind of thought that, hang on, he actually went on to be quoted in the Goal magazine. You can quote me on that. So it was quite a nice. Stonewall Football Club actually has a quote in this book. So yeah, I never thought that would come out in press, but yeah. So you know, I think it was just great to find like-minded footballers. And as Ashley said, you know, the years gone by, you know, I kind of worried what a gay football team would be like, and I kind of felt myself as, you know, I love football and football first, and that was the important thing. And I didn't really want to go along and find some mincing queens who sort of supposedly like football but couldn't kick a ball. And you know, it was a real pleasant surprise to see that the likes of Audley, that towering defender, you know, blocking people, Roger Taylor, and you know, really good footballers who were great guys as well, and you know, the camaraderie and that we've kept.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Roger Taylor, because that takes us to the next chapter, because it was Roger that became responsible for liaison with the Wandsworth and District League. I think Colin Jones was the person who was starting to have conversations with you guys about getting into a league, and Roger was actually attended, I think, with Dave Williams and a number of you, some meetings with Wandsworth and District, but we were still not an out team. We were still very much kind of in the closet, as it were. Now, Tony, you said to me that the club was kind of 50-50 about whether we should be an out team or you know, a not out team, as it were. But that all kind of came to a head. Alex, if you go to the next slide, please, for me. It came to a head when on the 1st of August, 1991, this is before the first season, in the Daily Mirror, you know, and the Daily Mirror at that time would be having sort of 6 million people read it on a daily basis. This was published in the Daily Mirror, Queens of the South, about a football team that was about to start in one of the London teams. Now, Tony, you have memories of the person who's referred to in this article being at training a couple of weeks before this article was published. What do you remember about that?
Yeah, so I mean, our first training sessions were at Wandsworth Common. And once we got enough players and we decided to, you know, that there was enough quality to join a league, we approached the Wandsworth District League. But we had played one grading game with them. So after approaching them, we played a grading game. I can't remember how we'd done, but we did really quite well, and they put us in the second tier. But in between playing the grading game and being allocated into a division, a guy had sort of come and joined the club, and who said that he'd been a referee. He was around the club for a few weeks and then disappeared. And then all of a sudden, we had this page 7 full-page spread under the title Queens of the South. And of course, we weren't an out-gay team at that stage. So we'd played our grading game. We were split 50-50 as to whether we should be out or not. Some guys had concerns, others didn't. But we were outed before playing our first league game. And of course, the league went into an emergency discussion about whether we should be allowed to play. From my understanding, and I think this is the case, but I think that the league had a vote, and we got 3 votes to 2 to be allowed to continue playing. And then, of course, to be honest, in reflection, I think this guy does us a favour, because we started off then as an out-gay team. It meant that the first season was really difficult because every team knew that they were then going to play the Puffs. And so they turned up as if it was an FA Cup final, and we had to play an FA Cup final every single week. It was quite tough, but in retrospect, it's probably did the club an enormous favour.
Yeah, Roger Taylor and Dave Williams, when I was speaking to them, both said actually the league were really supportive. Dave told me there was a guy called Ron Hardacre who said, well, 100% behind you. A 3-2 split doesn't suggest that, but they did vote for us to continue in the league. Miko, what are your memories of the article and then the club, you know, being an out football team?
First of all, I was in the early stages. I was one of the contact persons in the club. So I got a phone call one day.
It's a bit, sorry to interrupt, Mika, but we are having trouble again hearing you. So
sorry, must be something in technology.
Whilst maybe you sort your sound out. Audley, Paul, Ashley, what are your in terms of the timing? Audley and Ashley, were you playing for the club then, or not?
I was about to, and I do remember when that came out in the press. There was sort of consternation around the club about what was going to happen to us, because we just wanted to play football. And I think the league eventually decided that we hadn't joined for political reasons. We actually joined to play football, and that's why the vote went our way. But I remember everyone was just a bit concerned, what's going to happen? Here we were starting a league, and it's going to be taken away by this press article. Yeah.
I came in after Audley, but I saw that thing later. And I think by the time I joined, I thought the club was already out, so I wasn't really worried about it. I found it quite amusing, funny enough. I saw that and thought it was quite funny, the Queens of the South thing, and
also quite inaccurate if you actually look at it. I just want to go back though to talk about the person who was the secretary of the club at that time, a guy called Simon Thomas. He actually, Dave Williams tells me he had to work quite hard at that time because there was a lot of press, there was a lot of phone calls, and as the secretary, that was something that he had to deal with. He was subsequently the person that became the name of the most funniest moment of the season. We still have that end of season award in his name. Tony, you've got memories of him, and perhaps you can shed a bit of light as to why the funniest moment would be associated with Simon Thomas.
Simon was he was a bright fella. He was a really comical fella. He was involved in amateur dramatics as well, and I think I told you, Pete, one of the stories I remember, a group of us went along to a playhouse in World's End in Chelsea and watched Simon and his Amdram group. And just one thing that stuck in my mind was Simon had written a song from the perspective of a fella whose girlfriend called Kay had cheated on him. And Simon comes on and starts singing K, KY, 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 do it to me. So that gives you an idea of what Simon, he had camp funny humor. He played for the first 15 games in our first season. Unfortunately, Simon was the first guy from Stonewall to die of AIDS. And so fittingly, a end of season award was named after him.
Yes, and I wanted to make sure that we spoke about it. And Dave Williams said that it was the whole Queens of the South thing had quite a personal impact on him, and I think even his work found out, and it made it difficult for him at work, because we're still at a time where being out at work was what could limit your career aspirations. Some people were out, but not very many, and certainly professionally, quite a lot of us, including myself at that time, still kind of in the closet. But let's move on. We're out. We're approaching the league. We've done our training, and the first games of the season approach. The first games and we've been graded, like you said, and so we were in the second tier. So quite a challenging level for us. In that, and I'd like, if you would, Alex, for you to put the next slide up. Dave Williams keeps these records, and you can see the names of the players and the games that we played, the grading games. And I want to draw your attention to, I think it's row 5 and number 12. There's a guy called Paul. In fact, it's a bit more than row 12, but you can see at number 12, there's a Paul Baker with a 3 against his name. Paul, tell me the story. The club had a challenging start to the season, right? We hadn't won many games, if any. You were on the substitutes bench that day, but there's quite a story to your debut and what happened. Tell us.
Yeah, it was. I wanted to play, but I kind of, the first few games, basically Corinthian casuals we had some quite tough games, and I kind of thought I didn't really know if I could combine the two. And then Tony said to me, "Look, just come along. You can be sub. You'll be fine. You'll enjoy it. It'll be great fun. And we need a striker to try and score some goals." So I said, "Okay, I'll come along." So I went along, and then I got sort of approached by a couple of people from the committee saying, "Who's this guy?" And Tony said, "Oh, he's Paul. He's really good. He's you should let him play." So they said, "Well, you can't just turn up." And in sort of true gay fashion, they said, "Right, we need to have a discussion about this." So they had a committee meeting on the pitch to decide whether I was eligible to be a substitute for this game. And I was then told that if I was prepared to pay £20 the club subs, there and then I would be allowed to be the sub. So I got out my checkbook, one of those things that we had in those days. You kept one check in your wallet just in case. And I wrote to Stonewall FC, £20, and that allowed me to be on the bench. So, you know, the game was, I think, was not going brilliantly, but I think it was a 0-0 at half time. And then Dave Williams said, right, Paul, get your tracksuit off, you're on. And I came on and, you know, was lucky enough to score 3 goals, set Roger up for a couple as well. And we won 5-2, and it was our first ever victory for the club. So, you know, I was quite proud to sort of get a hat-trick as a sub in the first place. But, yeah, to get on after paying my 20 quid was quite funny, really. So, yeah, I guess, you know.
You had no trouble turning up the second week.
if you look at these stats, I was subbed the next game. I don't know what you have to do, but you know, I guess there was people that had been around a little bit before me. So, but I went on to score 14 goals in 17 games. So I was proud enough to be top scorer that season. So
well, let's talk about that season and the beginning of that season particularly, because talking to you in preparation for today, many of you talked about, I mean, Tony said it was like everybody wanted to beat us. It was, you know, we became the Manchester United and of the time because they wanted to beat the gays. And, you know, the homophobia and combined with, you know, the sheer intent of the opposition, and your experiences of it, you know, all of us on this webinar will have played at some time or another for the club. We kind of know, but what was it like then? You know, what's your memory, Audley, of you know the what it was like to play and any abuse on or off the pitch?
You found yourself turning up with probably bigger crowds than you would normally have at games, because it was almost like we were some sort of sideshow that people would want to come along and see. And yeah, people would you would hear the abuse. You'd have to try and concentrate on what you're doing, but yeah, you would hear that people would come along just to try and make it difficult for us. And yeah, it made it tough. Probably helped us to build our character more and made us more determined to continue. So no, it was an interesting year for the club, certainly.
Tony, what's your memory?
I echo what Audley's saying. I mean, it was tough. You know, you would turn up and, like Audley said, there would be quite often 20 or 30 sort of like away fans just there to heckle. This wasn't every team, but it was a theme all the way through the first season, and it did make it really tough. People went in for really evil challenges on us at times, because, you know, you've got to remember there was not there hadn't been a gay team before. This was something brand new, and they did not want to lose to us, and so that meant in some games at any cost, really, whether it was throwing their studs at us or throwing abuse from the sidelines. It was tough, but honestly, it built a really strong bond between us all, and just I think we may not have started off on a crusade as a club, but I think that we became really determined to hold our own and to show that we can play football.
Yeah, Miko, what are your recollections of those early games and how difficult they were?
Well, I hope you can hear me a bit better, Matt. Is my sound still all right? Good. I was enjoying it, really. I was glad that I could play football, and obviously I didn't pay too much attention to the sideshow. I did hear things mentioned, but I think I'm quite thick-skinned on that, so didn't worry me. I know that there are things said my teammates heard probably worse than I did, and there were some tackles flying, and there are a few tackles flying from my side. I think I did a couple of I got a yellow card once and fine because I went a bit hard on when I was actually trying to score, but didn't quite manage to raise the ball, and I went against the defender.
Yeah, Roger Taylor tells me the story. You guys might remember he had a friend of the name of Graham who used to play for us in that first season, quite a quiet guy. And Roger told me that he headbutted one of the opposition because he was being, fouled off the ball, and he lost it and he headbutted. And of course, the referee saw him and he got sent off. Audley and Ashley, I'm going to come to you. I just want to ask you a bit of a sensitive question. As people of colour, did you find, the abuse directed at you was different, or was, particularly if we were playing a black team, did you find it that you would get targeted differently?
Yeah, it was I would dread sometimes what the opposition would be like if we didn't know them, and you found that half the team was black and they had their supporters that were black as well on the touchline. We had an example where a few of us turned up for a game. I thought it was Hurlingham, but I think it was at Roehampton. And we got there early for the game, and we were sitting in the dressing room, and it was a time when a certain song was out by a reggae artist, if you can call him that, called Buju Banton. He had a massive hit with a song called Bum Bum Bai in a Batty Man's Head, which, for those who don't know patois, means, go out and kill gay men, go out and shoot them. So a few of us, I think a guy called Mehmet, who's Egyptian, we were sitting in the dressing room, and we can hear the song being sung at the other end of the corridor. And it was getting closer and closer and closer until it was right outside the dressing room door. And suddenly the door just flew open. They kicked the door open and stood there and shouted, "Bum Bum Bai, we're going to kill you, you're full of age, we're going to kill you, shoot a batty man in his head," that whole thing. What saved me that day, I think, was we had a goalkeeper who was built like a proverbial brick house, white, Liverpudlian. He got out of his seat and said, "Right, which one of you, C-word, wants to get F-word first?" And he lunged at them and they all legged it. And he just ran to the door and laughed. He turned and laughed. We got out on the pitch and all the supporters, it was non-stop elbows, spitting, and 2-footy challenges. And I'm only little, so I was just getting knocked all over the place. And I remember at the end of the game, the white players shook hands with us, but the black ones, you went up to shake hands. And I just got, just bumped out the way and totally ignored. And
what's your memory, Audley? What's your memory?
Yeah, for me, unfortunately, I missed that. For me, it was turning up for teams, and you knew if it was a black team that you were playing against, or mainly black team, you would know that you would hear the odd remark, and it was homophobic, because not seen in black culture that anyone should be gay, and it made it a bit difficult. But again, I think it made me try harder to show that I could actually play football. It wasn't about the fact I was gay. It was about the fact I'm here to play football against you, and I can show you that I can play. And that's how I think for most of the black players in the team, that's for us. I think it just raised our games when we were playing against black players. And yeah, you would hear things, and again, you had to just rise above it and just remember you wanted to play football.
Absolutely. And you said to me last week when we were chatting that you learned to look after one another as well when you were going to the games,
Yeah.
and that team bonding.
I think Wendy and Tony said it earlier about how what we went through as a team brought us closer together, and it meant that we were always looking out for each other. So no one would ever be left on their own. If we heard rumors that something might happen, that everyone will be told, be careful, or go out together, or go come back in together. But it was always about, we looked after each other like we were a family, basically.
Yeah, and I just want to break away at this moment to talk about somebody who stood on the sidelines quite often. People in the club will know the name David Puck, but might not know have known the individual. I certainly didn't. He was the partner of Dietmar, one of the goalkeepers that played for Stonewall in the first season, second season. He would be on the touchline when, you know, the events that you're describing would be happening. And quite often the women, more than the men, the wives and the girlfriends, right, is what you were saying, were giving. David Puck died, I think, quite suddenly. And the chairman's end of season award that had existed was then renamed in his memory. I think that's the story, isn't it? And of course, the Simon Thomas Award and the David Puck Award are still given to this day, but I just wanted to use that moment to call out David Puck and the fact that he stood on the touchline advocating for Stonewall, 30 years ago. But what you said, Tony and Audley, then about a team and how a team is bonded and how it comes together through adversity and through success is very much the story of that first season. Let's just lighten the conversation just a little bit, because Audley, you reminded me, as you referred to Wendy there, that we do have a tradition in this football club of some names. So we've got a few of those names with us this evening. Wendy, how did you get the name?
Me, Tony Roberts, and Alan Boswell. As we quite often did after games, we'd all go to Vauxhall, playing in Southwest London. We went to the Market Tavern. We were really pissed on the dance floor. I had a hoodie on with, it's really silly, a hoodie on with two ties down the front. And Tony Roberts, dancing in front of me, just grabbed these ties and started swinging them and saying Wendy. And 30 years later, it's still here. It's still with me. And obviously being called, having a surname of Woodward, it just sort of has a ring to it, which people won't let go of.
And Audley, otherwise known as Mo, you have to tell us a story.
Yeah, mine came from our first tour to New York, first games that was. And I think I got a little bit drunk one night, and as people were shouting out my name, I got to a point where I suddenly started saying, my name's not Audley, it's Morag. And that became my name, became shortened to Mo, but that's how I got my name.
And Paul, you've had a number of names whilst in the football club.
Well, there was Hilda, for Hilda Baker, who was an actress at the time, and then the Boney M song brought out a song called Ma Baker, so I then became Ma Baker. So yeah, I'll take those. Could have been worse.
It could have been a lot
worse.
Could
have been Roger. Could have been Roger's one.
Alex, I wonder if you could share the team stats again, please, just as we kind of wrap this section up and before we move to the tours. In that first season, when I was talking to Dave Williams, he was saying, as the manager, the goal was to get a team and to stay up and to gain, respectability. And the team did that. You finished kind of mid-table in that first season. Roger Taylor told me when he attended one of the league meetings that the captain of Fidelis, which was one of the early teams that you played, and he had been particularly, his wife or girlfriend had been particularly abusive. But he actually said to Roger Taylor at the league meeting, well, you've certainly proved me wrong. Gay people can play football. It goes back to what you were saying, Audley. The league season 91-92, you could just see with the variety of the names on that list of stats, the number of games that we played. It was a serious team in a serious league. And then in the second season, we actually went on to get through to the cup final. Paul, tell us about the cup final. What are your memories?
Yeah, down at the Hurlingham Club, and we were sort of had a good team, team talk before the game. I think we kind of were edging the game early on, but then I think they scored 2 quick goals, and I managed to get one back to make it 2-1. But I don't think we had any more clear-cut chances, and we sort of sadly ended up losing 2-1. But it was just great to play in a cup final and to feel that it's so early in our career as a football club, that we'd actually reached the cup final. So yeah, you know, tremendous pride, and it's great to see that the club have done on the Twitter feed done a little link with some of that footage from that first game. And I think that goal that I scored in that game is probably in the top 3 goals I've ever scored. So it was a particularly good memory from that perspective. And yeah, you know, and the sort of start, if you like, of a whole trophy cabinet that followed. So
yeah,
you know, it was, you know, got a runners-up medal, but you know, obviously there was much more excitement to come later on in the club's history. So
no, interesting you start talking about medals and competitions, and one thing that does distinguish us from many of the straight teams that you would have played for and that still play today is international competition, which kind of takes me to the next and last part of this conversation. If you could go to slide 4, please, for me, Alex. You know, Stonewall, I think, Miko, you told me we were a handful of players went to Atlanta in 91, but the first official tour was New York 92, and you can see some of the faces and how they've changed since then. And, you know, we came 4th in that tournament, and then we came 3rd, and then we came 2nd, and then ultimately we won in Berlin 95, and that's the Igliffer World Championships. You know, the emergence of some of the players, even in 92, I can see a very young Tony Roberts and Chris Worth in that picture. And the other photographs there, they must bring some happy memories of the tours. Astley, you know, when you and I were having a conversation, you were very open about the fact that you were quite reticent about playing for a gay team. You said so this evening. You know, you were playing 5-a-side, but it was the tours that kind of changed it for you. Tell us about your first tour.
Well, I was a jobbing actor at the time, so I didn't have any money. So back then, if you didn't have any money to go on tour, you didn't go. And the first tour that I managed to get some money together for was 93 Los Angeles. And I just missed out on the last place in the squad, the turn of cards, basically, and I got the lowest card. But the first tour as a Stonewall player was the New York Gay Games 94. And that absolutely blew my socks off. The flight over was with the Irish fans who were going to the World Cup to see their team play Italy. Standing outside the University of Columbus Stadium with the British contingent who were competing in all sports, and the fanfare, and then marching in for the first time, I was absolutely speechless. And I was standing next to David Williams, and David Williams turned to me and said, "What do you think?" And I didn't answer him. I just didn't answer him. It was just so moving, and I knew then I was part of a wider family. It wouldn't be the same going back and playing for the straight side. I think that was the beginning of where I started falling out of love with the straight side. Seeing that I was pushed out anyway, but I mean, I wasn't really that bothered now because I was with family. It felt like I'd found this long lost family.
What are your memories, Audley?
As you show those pictures, I remember particularly, obviously 92 was our first one. And I remember at the end of the tournament, when we finished 4th, most of the other teams said if we had decided that we shouldn't go out drinking every night, we might have actually done better, because we were probably the best side there, but spent too much time out. And then there's one other thing, the 94 one, I remember Ashley just mentioned the World Cup was on. And I remember we went for one of our training sessions, where I think where we took that picture. I remember Americans walking past and saying, "Are you here to play in the World Cup with England?" And we went, "No, we're the gay football team." And suddenly their eyes lit up, because they were actually so impressed that we were there to play a game tournament. They took even more interest in us, because we're into soccer itself.
Tony, what's your memory of Audley's late nights and a disappointing semi-final?
Well, 92, it was, I mean, it was our first trip as a club to play in an international competition. And for many of us, it was our first trip to the States. We got there and we drank and we partied. I remember I was sharing a room with Simon, I think Audley and Joe Brisky. And I remember sort of coming home at like 5 o'clock in the morning thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get killed, and walking into the room and finding that no one was there. And, and then we'd be playing our first game at 9 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, we did really well. We were playing really well. And I remember we got to the semi-final. And I remember in the first 15 minutes thinking, wow, we've got this. We are just in complete control. And then I think everyone ran out of steam. And we lost, I think we lost 4-1 in that semi-final. And it was so heartbreaking that I think the club put rules in place for going forward, that if you're going to play, you're going to have 1 pint, 2 pints, and you're in.
I can tell by Audley's reaction how he abided by those rules.
I'm telling you, Audley's a sight to see when he's drunk.
I want to come back to you, right, as we approach the last 5 minutes of our conversation, from the Salmon and Compass conversation and, you know, placing the advert and getting a handful of telephone calls and hearing, you know, Tony and Mo and the guys talking about semi-finals in Los Angeles and gay games in New York. When you look back and you think, you know, of that advert that you placed, what do you look back and reflect on?
Never in my wildest dreams did I think that this would happen. I mean, I was only interested in playing football with like-minded people, and that did happen. And then what followed after that, it was just something absolutely amazing. I couldn't really, I can't put it into words really. It's just so good, and I'm really, in a way, I'm proud, but I'm more pleased to see that the club went from strength to strength and won all these things. And it was just a dream for me. Obviously, when I put the advert in, I kind of thought, well, I had kind of a dream, and obviously I only played the first season, and then I moved up north for personal reasons. I had a father who lived up north. So
what about you, Paul? You know, the tours and looking back, you were there at the beginning, missed the first 4 games, did the dramatic debut, and you know, Stonewall captain.
I think the tours were integral, and they really were fantastic. You know, we would play Trudeau and all these silly games at the airports, and you know, and then we got good and we started getting matching tracksuits, so everyone knew, you know, which was, you know, fairly uncommon at that early stage. And I think we used to frighten a few of the teams purely because we looked so professional. We got sponsorship thanks to Central Station, Courage, and Clone Zone, and that allowed us, if you like, to be a bit more professional. And I think going back to what Tony said, we think we had a rule where it's 2 pints and in bed by 1 o'clock. We're sort of, you know, we sort of still allowed that freedom, but we still wanted to become more professional as we did. Obviously, we wouldn't get away with that these days, but we still, you know, did really well. And to go 4th, then 3rd, then 2nd, and that magical day when Tony scored the winning goal in Berlin to win the World Cup for the first time. You know, I, as a little boy, had always dreamt of lifting a World Cup. And, you know, that day, I remember at that very moment, it was the best day of my life. And I think, you know, the guys will back me on that. It was such a, you know, such a tremendous feeling of achievement to have, you know, to started this club only a few years back and to be lifting trophies, and then, you know, getting the media coverage that went with it, and, you know, being able to bring in better players as well. So, you know, but I think those tours were the real bonding, you know, and the camaraderie and the friendships. You know, I actually got married to a Stonewall second team captain, and it's our 25-year anniversary this year.
Oh my God.
So, you know, Stonewall has not only brought me friendship for life, it's also brought me a partner for life. And, you know, it's very heartwarming to see these guys here today and to know. I mean, I went for a walk with Nigel Simmons and Andy Francis 3 weeks ago, you know, so, and I was in contact with Lenny Bruce on email the other day. So it's so fantastic that this club has not only given us football, but it's given us fantastic memories, but also fantastic friends. And
I couldn't agree with you more, and it's a nice way to end, Paul, because what you say is very true about the tours and very true about the club and the friendships that we forged through it. But actually, none of that would have happened. None of my memories would have happened, and the people on this call, had it not been for you guys. The advert that was placed, the conversation in the Salmon and Compass, the reaction to the Queens of the South, being there for everyone and being ever present at the beginning of the season and standing up for gay men can play football. You know, my thanks to you. And I'm sure everybody else would be saying thanks to you, because if it had not been for you, Stonewall Football Club would not have formed, and we would not have had those memories that you speak very wisely about, Paul. Next week, Andy Walmsley is going to continue this story. The years after 1995, with continued success from the club. And on the panel for the early 20s, from 2000 to 2006, will be Roger Bromley, Peter Clayton, Ian Drain, Andy Francis, Neil Fifield, myself, and Chris Worth, who went on to become captain and chairman of the club. I hope that you have enjoyed listening to the stories from 30 years ago. I certainly enjoyed speaking to you guys over the past couple of weeks. It's been an honor and a privilege, and I do not say that lightly. I thank you very much for joining tonight. I just call out once again, Dave Williams, Lenny Bruce, Simon Nella, and Roger Taylor, who also helped put together this evening. I wish you a very good evening. Thanks very much, and look forward to meeting with you next week when Andy Walmsley takes the reins. Good night. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Going.
Good to see you, Audley.
Yeah, see you all soon.
Guys.
That's why Alan had to stick his head in. He just hasn't seen for ages.
See you later.
Take care.
Okay, bye.